21 City Council meeting to order. Will everyone please stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ruffridge,
Here.
Carey,
Here.
Chilson,
Present.
Lisa Parker,
Present.
Hutchings,
Present.
Student Representative Cox.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Ms.
I'll make
Hutchings,
a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. Are there any changes to the agenda or consent agenda? Vice Mayor Parker?
Mayor Whitney, I would move to add laydown action memorandum 2021-001, a request for an excused absence by Councilmember Pamela Parker to the consent agenda as agenda item 8C1.
Are there any objections to adding that to the consent agenda? Seeing none, would the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Approval of the January 27th, 2021 council meeting minutes. New business ordinances, ordinance 2021-003, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $90,000 in the utility fund and the utility system capital improvement fund for the wastewater treatment plant screw press design project, introduced by the city manager. Public hearing on February 24th, 2021. New business ordinances, ordinance 2021-004, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $17,000 in the general fund for the City Hall generator automatic transfer switch project, introduced by the city manager. Public hearing on February 24th, 2021. New business resolutions, resolution 2021-008, approving a $129,600 grant to the Kenai Peninsula Food Bank to extend the weekly food box program, supporting area residents impacted by the COVID-19 public health emergency, introduced by the city manager. New business other, action memorandum 2021-001, request for an excused absence from the February 10th, 2021 regular city council meeting, Councilmember Pamela Parker. And that is your consent agenda.
Are there any public comments on any of the items just read by the clerk? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Madam Clerk, are there any remote attendees wishing to speak?
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. There are no hands raised.
None. Thank you. Having no one else wishing to speak, the approval of the agenda and consent agenda is back before the council. Are there any council objections to approving the agenda and consent agenda? Seeing none, the agenda and consent agenda are approved. The next item on the agenda is item number 4, a presentation with prior notice, 20 minutes total. Visitors Quarterly Report by Shannon Davis, Executive Director of the Soldotna Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Ms. Davis.
As I started to put the report together for fourth quarter, I realized it is fourth quarter, but it's also the end of the year, so I really like to kind of look back and see what we did all year long. And even though this year looked much different than a normal year for us, I still was really pleasantly surprised at how much we were able to accomplish. We did wrap up our year in 2020 with 473 members. That number pleased me so much because we were able to get through the year with an 89% retention rate, 59 new members, and a lot of our members actually came through the year stronger than we were fearful of. While our events certainly look different, we did facilitate 24 different community events. We had 6 ribbon cuttings. hybrid fundraiser that replaced our pie auction that brought in $19,000 for our scholarship.
Was I? There we go. Sorry about that. Let's see, our online communications continue to evolve and grow. We have 5 Facebook pages now that we're managing with a combined impact of over 1 million reaches throughout the year. And certainly our proudest accomplishments for the year centered around the work we did on the 2 Shop Local campaigns, the first in the summertime, and then, as you all know, the second revolved around our Christmas Shop Local campaign that we partnered with the city on, and we couldn't be more grateful. It was absolutely the highlight of my chamber career so far to participate in that, so thank you so much. So now let's take a closer look at this quarter. We do have our new 2021 visitor guide in hand. It's filled with new updated photography that we had done by Martin Media over the summer, and he did a phenomenal job, and it has a fresh new look to it. We did liquidate our 2020 stock. We ended up mailing out close to 9,000 more guides than we would normally mail in any given year because we had such limited visitation and limited distribution through our normal points of like visitor centers and airports throughout the summer. Looking at next summer, we are placing our advertising. Certainly, we are looking and watching at what our expectations are for visitation this coming summer. Cruise traffic is certainly a concern. I know that you've all heard that Canada is not allowing cruises to come to their borders, but we do know that demand for air travel is increasing. I frequently have conversations with Alaska Airlines. They're watching it closely, and they're actually considering increasing capacity for this summer with the demand as high as it is. We are also on the road system, which is a huge benefit to us compared to areas like Southeast. We are also watching the border situation with Canada. It would certainly help our situation if that were to open up, but Canada is a sovereign nation and they get to make that choice. So I think one way or another with the fly drive traffic that we're going to receive, and then also Alaska showed up for us in a big way last summer, and I know that all those that have been introduced to the peninsula or reintroduced will be coming to visit, and we will be concentrating on inviting them as well. Our social media continues to grow. As I noted, Instagram has increased 16% over the last quarter. The Chamber's page grew by 27%, probably largely due to the Shop Local campaign. And our food group is right at 4,100 members now. I put a picture of the homepage of our website redesign so that you could all know that it's not a figment of our imagination. This project is moving forward, albeit very slowly. We have just recently completed uploading pictures and narratives for all of our 478 member listings. We've finally fully integrated the back-end system called MemberClicks with our QuickBooks accounting system. But there's still a lot that we are working through, and we'll continue to update you as we move forward. Looking at our events, which are highlighted on your back page, I mentioned earlier the pie auction and the fact that we took it virtual. I'm not sure if all you know what a wonderful baker your city clerk is. Shelley actually provided one of our 10 desserts that we auctioned in a live auction and brought in quite a bit of money for our scholarships. It was a beautiful Aquaman cake. Thank you, Shelley. We appreciate you. Let's see, we held our Soldotna Shines event in the Soldotna Regional Sports Complex parking lot, and I'd say we easily had about 2,000 people that attended that event, but it worked perfectly, although there was a bit of a traffic jam, but everybody stayed socially distanced and in their cars, and we got to listen to caroling in a partnership with KSRM Radio Group. But then, of course, as I noted, the highlight of our year was absolutely the Soldotna Cares holding our own Shop Local program. We did distribute $289,000 in vouchers that were paid out to area residents and even some that weren't residents from our area, but that money went directly into small business pockets. And it just was phenomenal, the feeling around that program. We had 2,893 shoppers. Of those, 1,643 submitted their receipts online. Of those, 766 had physical addresses outside of Soldotna city limits, and 13 were even outside the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Over the course of the program, we had right at 1,200 people come into the Soldotna Visitor Center to receive their vouchers, and we heard over and over and over again how grateful they were for the program and how they thought it was a wonderful idea, and just the feeling around it was exactly what we had hoped it would be. And again, I thank you all for your support of that. Looking ahead, we are planning for the 30th annual Sweeney St. Patrick's Day Parade. We're very excited that we're going to be holding it. It's going to be on the 17th. It will be a new parade route this year. It's going to be parade lineup at Parker Park in Soldotna, and then the route will go down. It will go down a road. It will go, it'll go, it's not readout. I had a map and I didn't bring it with me. We are publishing the maps and it's all over social media. We're getting people, you don't have to sign up, you just line up for this. But we're hoping we have a great turnout for the 30th anniversary of the parade. Also, we're beginning to have conversations on how we can safely hold music in the park this summer. We can't wait to come back together as a community. And we're even already having conversations around progress days. I did talk with Shelley earlier this week about the fact that when we do progress days this year, we're going to have a 4-day event kicking off on a Wednesday and culminating on a Saturday. And in the past, the city council has always had their contribution to the community by having a barbecue on Sunday in the park. And we just kind of like to throw it out to you guys that we would love to partner with you in a different manner if you would like to do something different for Progress Days this year. And with that, I'll conclude my report.
Are there any questions from the council? Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple questions and then comments. Do you have any particular suggestions in terms of what the council might do as part of the new Progress Days? idea?
Well, I do have an idea, if it was something you were interested in. Last year, we were having conversations with Hobo Jim about coming and doing a Friday night concert. He no longer does concerts in local venues, and I know that it would be a big hit with the community to bring him back. And we would love to do that on Friday night, and then the council could actually interact with the crowd from the stage as well if you were interested. So that's one idea.
Excellent, thank you. Although I know the people in the town they just love the hot dogs every year. They look forward to it, it's on their calendar. Second question, are we still the third largest chamber in the state of Alaska?
I haven't looked that up recently. I should. I will, and I will have that information for you the next time I see you.
Excellent, because I thought it was the third. And comments. I want to comment on the great contribution that the chamber makes to the people of Soldotna. With what you do on socialization, particularly with cyber, you guys are very active in terms of the technology. You're more than up to date. You're ahead of date. That helps us very much. You also allow businesses to collaborate, which again is just a huge asset. In many parts of this country, businesses are kind of on their own, not in Soldotna. You do a huge amount of collaboration and people appreciate it. Particularly those young people who are maybe starting their first business. You guys are real helpful to them. You give them an environment in which they know they have support, and it keeps all of us together. And lastly, I just want to say you guys are a huge promoter for the city of Soldotna. We owe you guys a huge amount, and I know that we work mutually in many ways. There are places where the chamber and the city are not friends. You guys are great friends to us, and hopefully we are the same to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the council? I would just have one or two here. I know I burned a lot of those hot dogs over the years and kind of missed that. I would get a sunburn standing in front of the barbecue pit. Have you heard anything about the Canadians opening up the border crossings yet?
We just haven't. We have been staying in touch with our, with our senators, that, our leadership at the federal level, and we haven't heard anything.
Okay, thank you.
I will keep you informed,
Okay,
though.
appreciate it. Thank you again.
Mayor Whitney?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. So the chamber operates on a calendar year, not a fiscal year?
Correct.
Okay. Which is different from the city. So I looked at this and went, you're a little over budget. Okay. So I was in a conversation earlier today, and I know that there is a very active group working to try to figure out ways to potentially still allow cruise ships to come to Alaska with potentially a technical stop in Canada. So this is something that they're working on, and there's a very active group working on it to try to continue to allow cruise ships to come in. And I would just reiterate the comments that Councilmember Carey made and thank the chamber for the great job and the great rollout you had of Buy Local that was so successful.
Thank you so much, Ms. Parker.
One other thing. If you would put it on your tickler file, come about the end of June to get me some of these books, guides, I will take them to Tampa, Florida, where I have to go to a convention.
I will send as many as you would like. We'll even mail them for you if you'd like.
Yeah, that might be the better way.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Mayor Whitney, I just wanted to say, actually, I was just looking through that book, and I maybe made a mistake to not look through these before, but these are incredible. Like, this is very, very good. I even learned a few things in here in the last 5 minutes about my own town. So, very great work on that, so just wanted to say thanks.
Well, I'm just going to float out of this meeting room tonight. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comments and presentations. Items other than those appearing on the agenda, 3 minutes per speaker and 20 minutes aggregate. Are there any members from the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? For those participating through Zoom, raise your hands if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Madam Clerk, do we have any hands raised?
Mayor Whitney, I see no hands raised.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, item 6, Assembly and Legislative Reports. Are there any representatives from the borough or the state in attendance who would like to speak? And for those participating by Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone there?
Mayor Whitney, there are no hands raised.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is number 7, public hearings, testimony limited to 3 minutes per speaker. First item up for public hearing is ordinance 2021-001, amending Soldotna Municipal Code 17.10.285, Kenai Overlay District, to correct references to Kenai Peninsula Borough Code and to provide consistency in the regulations and activities along anadromous streams, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact?
I'll make a motion to enact
Second.
ordinance 2021-001.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchings. Second?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. A report from the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Zarneski, our Director of Economic Development and Planning, will give the administrative report. And I also just want to welcome and introduce Jen Hester, who's here tonight. She's our Associate Planner as well, and introduce her to the council.
Thank you. And I'll point out that Jen was the person that caught this discrepancy in our codes and brought it to my attention. So the code or the ordinance is before you tonight is a housekeeping measure that corrects a reference in our code that should match a section of borough code and no longer does. So what this change will do is provide the consistency that was originally intended when the KROD was adopted, and basically strives for the coordination, cooperation between our two jurisdictions, and hopefully makes it easier for the public when they're trying to interpret these regulations and when they're required to comply with those regulations. So when our ordinance was first adopted back in 1999, we included a reference to section 2118.070 in Borough Code. In 2013, the borough revised that section of code and renumbered it to 2118.065. That left us and our code referencing an old section and one that no longer exists. So this corrects that change and brings us back into compliance or back so that we match. It also corrects an inconsistency in our elevated light penetrating standards for great walks and walkways, and again references the appropriate section of Borough Code. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
The public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone with a raised hand?
Mayor Whitney, there are no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Having or hearing no one who wishes to speak, the item is back before the council. Are there any council comments? Seeing none, we'll call for the roll.
Councilmember Ruffridge,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Chilson,
Yes.
Lisa Parker,
Yes.
Hutchings,
Yes.
Student Representative Cox.
Yes.
You have 5 yes votes.
Ordinance 2021-001 passes by a 5-0 vote. Moving on to the next item is ordinance 2021-002, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $10,000 in the utility fund and authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Eberline Building Incorporated in the amount of $32,324 for the wastewater treatment plant cold storage conversion project introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact? Vice Mayor Parker.
Move to enact ordinance 2021-002.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Hudgens, thank you. A report from the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to invite Kyle Cornelis, Public Works Director, to give the report.
Thank you. This ordinance would do 2 things. 1, provide supplemental funding for the reference project, and 2, it would authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Eberline Building Incorporated. The project was approved in the FY21 operating budget in the utility fund. It consists of the converting a cold storage building into a heated structure, warm storage. So it's insulation, sheeting, painting, unit heater, and associated piping, things of that nature. The project was in the FY21 operating budget, funded at the $25,000 level. The original intent was to conduct most of the work in-house. Subsequent to that, with the workload and some of the COVID provisions, the utility department decided to bid the project rather than do it in-house. A couple of factors resulted in costs that exceed the budget. One of which is escalating material prices. Some of you may be aware that lumber and building materials have skyrocketed in the last 6, 7, 8 months. Additionally, we probably exceeded the threshold for Title 36 prevailing wages. The Little Davis-Bacon Act, which is $25,000. Public construction projects above that require Davis-Bacon wages, and so that certainly contributed to the higher costs. So we believe a $10,000 supplemental appropriation will be sufficient to award the contract and complete the project as planned. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for Mr. Cornelis? Mr. Chilson.
Thank you. I didn't see anywhere in this report as far as the size of the facility and corresponding increase in energy costs to heat that. Is this going to be a significant recurring expense once we convert it from cold storage to heated?
Good question. Thank you. Mr. Chilson, through the mayor, it's a 1,500 square foot building. It is adjoining our existing shop, so there's really only 3 sides. It was anticipated when we built it, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that it would eventually be converted into warm storage, and so the piping and electrical is run and available. This is an anticipated cost. There will be a marginal increase in energy usage, although I will say there will be a decrease in the fact that we store about 10 standby generators in that building, and they are on battery maintainers and some heaters so that they can be deployed at a moment's notice for Seward lift stations in the winter. So there will be some increased costs for gas, probably for the unit heater to keep it hot, but we will certainly drop some energy costs in terms of electricity for that equipment.
Okay, I imagine for a 1,500 square foot building, it's going to be kind of negligible. I just wasn't sure if this is like a 10 or 20,000 square foot building.
Right, no, it should be pretty negligible, probably about 15 minutes worth of the blowers running.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Carey?
Did this go out to bid?
Mr. Carey, through the mayor, yes, sir, we did competitively bid it, and we received 3 bids, and the low bid was for Mr. Eveline, who is a very qualified and capable local contractor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions from the council? Seeing none. The public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Madam Clerk, do we have any hands raised?
Mayor Whitney, there are no hands raised.
Thank you. Hearing no one who wishes to speak, the item is back before the council. Are there any council comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ruffridge,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Chilson,
Yes.
Lisa Parker,
Yes.
Hutchings,
Yes.
Student Representative Cox? Yes. You have 5 yes votes.
Thank you. Ordinance 2021-002 passed on a 5-0 vote. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is new business, item number 8, and those were on the consent agenda. So now we'll move to item 9, mayor's and council reports. My report is that I don't really have much to report. I would like to mention that this Saturday there'll be a COVID vaccine gathering at Soldotna Prep, the old middle school, and anyone over age 65 should sign up. You can sign up at covidvax.alaska.gov or call in the Kenai Peninsula Borough at 907-262-4636. And I do understand, reading in the paper today or reading on the news, that the vaccines program will expand starting tomorrow to school teachers and anyone over the age of 50. So for those of you listening, time to sign up and get your first shot of the vaccine. And that's all I have tonight. So council reports on boards and commissions, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting, Mr. Ruffridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the pleasure of being in chambers for Parks and Rec last week. Items on the agenda were nominations of board chair and vice chair. Chair is voted on as Penny Vadla. I tried to say that with a good Boston accent in it. Vadla. And then Mr. Delker as vice chair. One of actually the only agenda item was a resolution to recommend that the green space and sledding hill currently attached to Soldotna Elementary be retained if the borough were to choose to do something different with the elementary school. So this was a letter being submitted to the borough asking for that to be in consideration should that be something that's moved forward. So there was some discussion about that and about the green space and sledding hill being important to the city, and they ended up passing that as a resolution to move that forward. We then proceeded to discuss capital improvement for the next 5 years. Some highlights from that were a trail. This was actually very exciting. The Parks and Rec Department, I just have to put in my 2 cents. This was not at the meeting, but this year, I just, and in years prior, I'm sure, but I've just been so impressed with that department and the work that they've done, particularly during this pandemic. One of the exciting options for capital improvement was a trail and a build-out over the course of a few phases at the end of West Redoubt to take people through and have access to fishing, as well as some cultural sites that are in that area that the city owns at the end of West Redoubt. And very exciting project design there that was in the capital improvement plan. In addition was some concepts for Arc Lake improvement, particularly parking in the beach area, which if anyone attended the movie night and skating there on Saturday, this would have come in handy. There was a significant parking issue for the Arc Lake event there. Some upgrades for Riverview Park, and then another capital improvement, which is replacing the wood fall protection in Farnsworth Park with rubber mulch, which is a significant cost, about $40,000 to do that. But the resulting removal of the wood fiber would actually be retained in a pile and used to refill Soldotna Creek Park fall protection in the park area, potentially for the next 5 to 7 years. So some cost savings as well as some additional upgrades to the Farnsworth Park were discussed at the Parks and Rec meeting. And Mr. Cornelis was kind enough to give us the outlines on some of the, we got a preview, right, Kyle? Yeah, that was nice, of the City of Soldotna Capital Improvement Plan as well. And overall, it was a very informative and great meeting. And Andrew and Joel have a lot going on. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Ruffridge. I attended that meeting also, and I believe Mr. Carmichael was trying to make that meeting as long as one of our 5-hour city council meetings. He worked diligently at that. So, moving on to item 10, City Manager's Report. Ms. Queen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So included in the packet are all of the individual reports that our department heads prepare for you every year, looking back at the last calendar year and both reporting what their department was working on, what they accomplished, and some of the, I think, very praiseworthy efforts that came out of really all the departments. In addition to that, I've got just a few things that I'll give as my verbal report. Wanted to tell you what the city's doing to support the local vaccination efforts. So we're doing a few different things. The borough has a call center, that phone number you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, and we've got staff that are available to help get folks signed up over the phone. So we can help folks. I know some of our library staff got about 30 seniors appointments booked over the phone, helping people who didn't have access to the website. So we're doing that. We're got about 5 city employees who have volunteered for the event this Saturday, so we'll be there helping to assist with logistics at the mass vaccination clinic at Soldotna Prep, and subsequent clinics as well will be available to do that. And then really we're just doing a lot of communication. So as you mentioned yesterday, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for filming that video, which we shared on Facebook. That was accurate as of yesterday. Today, the new announcement was made about the new eligibility, and already we've got updated information trying to share out with folks, both who's eligible, where to go to find out more about that, and importantly, how to access the appointments that are available. So we're using Facebook as well as Doggone News, and kind of all of our avenues to help communicate that information in partnership with the borough OEM department. It was mentioned the Arc Lake event, as is often the case with our Parks and Rec events. Their popularity exceeds the parking capacity. We were aware there was some concern about spillover parking at that location, and people parking either across the highway and walking across, or quite a few people decided to park on the highway, so adjacent. The state had plowed it pretty wide, and some people just parked right on the road. That was not something that we'd experienced so far at these family skate events, but we've talked about it since. We will come up with a plan and in the future just assess the capacity of that site to host what we expect will be continued popular events into the future. Last thing I'll mention, we met internally with the Planning Department, Parks Department, and Public Works Department to talk about spruce bark beetles. You may recall we were notified that we had been successful in the award of a FEMA grant, a hazard mitigation grant that was through the State of Alaska's Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. It was about a year ago that we were notified of that. So John was kind of took the lead in securing that grant award. We do not yet have the agreement. We do not yet have a firm timeline on when those funds might be available. But I can tell you that there are several properties in town where our Parks Department is a little bit nervous about the status of the beetle kill. And what they're going to do is bring in a forester to kind of do a risk assessment. So looking at the trees anew, we worked with someone previously to put together a grant project proposal, but a lot's changed in a year. So they're going to do another walk around of some of our properties, particularly the properties in town, like the dog park, Parker Park, but also our much larger campground properties, and try and get a sense of what's the urgency with which we need to act on any trees that might be potential hazard trees. So when we have that information back, we'll have a better sense of whether we need to come up with a plan even prior to being able to receive those grant funds, or if we think that we can wait potentially in the next 6 months, it might be another year. FEMA's busy with other things right now, but we're continuing to push to understand when we can get that grant wrapped up and get that project going, and that would focus exclusively on City of Soldotna owned properties. So many of our park properties, I think there were 9 different properties included in that project. So just want to let you know we're having those conversations. It's on our radar. We're going to do this assessment, be able to come back with some more information and potentially a plan moving forward. And a critical component of that will be communication with the public, because as you know, when trees are cut on a property, it changes the landscape entirely. And the dog park is a good example of a property where it may end up looking clear-cut when all the trees are removed. So we're going to be very thoughtful about informing the council, giving updates, as well as giving opportunities for the public to be informed and potentially advise as we think through what needs to occur on those properties. And that concludes my report, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to our city manager. What will be done with the trees that are taken down? Will the public have access to them, or will we have use for them?
Thank you, Mr. Carey, through the mayor. In part, that answer will depend on whether we're using grant funds or not. So the grant, if we're using the funding through the grant, it will have very specific requirements about what is eligible to happen with those. So without that grant agreement in front of us, we can't answer that at this time. There may be places, for example, our larger properties, Swiftwater, Centennial, where it makes sense for us to fall the trees but leave them in place. And then there will be other properties where our plan will require that we kind of get them off the property, and whether that means that we can make them available to the public or the contractor can make them available, or, you know, we don't have those answers, unfortunately, at this point.
Thank you. I just want to, as much as I can, encourage that we allow our local people to use those whenever possible. That's fireweed can be really nice. Thank you.
Any other, Mr. Chilson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question on the spruce bark beetle program. As it's structured right now, would there be any incorporation of a replanting aspect to that? And if not, has there been any consideration of that we could administer ourselves?
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. Through the mayor, that was a significant part of our internal discussion this week. And I think there will be a potentially separate treatment for several of the different properties, but certainly we would want to come forward with a plan of not just what the beetle mitigation needs are, but what the then subsequent reforestation of that property, that park property would be.
Got it.
So we talked a little bit about transplanting trees. There may be some purchase of trees to replant. Certainly imagining what the next phase of those properties will be part of the plan that we bring forward.
Okay, because green spaces are something that's really important to me, and not just myself, but I know a large portion of the community. And if we find ourselves in a position where the grant doesn't provide funding for replanting, I would like to see something brought back to the council for consideration on us funding a significant replanting effort, at least in the parks, the more publicly visible spaces, so.
Thank you, and I will point out the grant does not provide for replanting, so that would be an effort that we would engage separately. Thanks for bringing that up.
Any other questions for Ms. Queen? And I do have a couple of quick comments. Have we had any luck in looking for grants that will help citizens remove trees from their property?
So I can summarize Mr. Zarneski's shaking of his head. He did a fairly exhaustive search a year ago looking at different funding opportunities. The one that we turned up that was available for homeowners had fairly limiting criteria. It was for landowners who had property in excess of 5 acres. So for most of Soldotna residents, that wouldn't apply. We're not aware of any other funding source available for folks on an individual basis.
I would certainly hope we keep an eye on that just to see if something does pop up in the future, because there's a lot of private properties around here with a lot of dead trees. And some of these folks, especially in this current situation, may not be able to afford to remove them, and then they become a fire hazard and a structural hazard if they fall in somebody's house or person. The other thing is, I think these year-end reports are great. I think they're very informative, and I'm just wondering, do we publish these, put these on our webpage or or anywhere else that so the public can have access to them and see what a good job the different departments are doing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that question. We publish them only in the council packet, but we'd be happy to put them somewhere on the website as well if someone was interested and maybe have an easier access to find that document. Be happy to do that.
Yeah, I think it'd be benefit everyone in the community to see just what the city does do during the year. So appreciate that. Thank you. Any other comments for the city manager? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comments. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Madam Clerk, do we have any raised hands?
Mayor Whitney, there are no raised hands.
Thank you. And moving on to agenda item 12, council comments. And we'll start with Mr. Cox.
Over at SoHi, we have been back at school 100%. Everybody, there's a slight portion of the students who have been online, but they've been online all year. Majority have gone back to 100% school. We've been, and actually this week we have been doing a spirit week for Valentine's Day. Yeah, tomorrow is Hawaii versus Alaska Day, so we'll see who wins. And then sports, I don't know if you've looked in the newspaper, but I know that skiing has been in the newspaper. I think I've been on the front page once, maybe. I don't know. Hockey has state next week, and they've been doing games throughout the week. I know I think they've been at the Sports Center and then maybe in Kenai. And then basketball has been, they're in the middle of their peninsula schools. They're doing all which they're staying peninsula, but hopefully our athletic director, Mr. McFall, was saying that by March, maybe Valley schools, so that may be expanding. And then we also have basketball cheer, which is new to this year, but they have an online tournament where they're going to do it, film it, and then compete, which they have a state tournament online. And next week we have parent-teacher conferences.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Mr. Ruffridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I already mentioned, I just wanted to say thank you to our Parks and Rec crew again and for the city for the event on Saturday. It was very well done, incredibly professional staff we have at our Parks crew, and they just did a great job at hosting an event that people were really excited to be at. I also had the opportunity last week to speak over Zoom, unfortunately, but it was all fine, as a member of the city council to a group of folks at the middle school of kids. there was an in-class group and then a group online. And they're a wealth of information, that group. A few things that they would really like to see in the city of Soldotna is a Chick-fil-A, so take note of that. Krispy Kreme, and actually, for some reason, they seem very, as people that do not drive, they feel the animosity about roundabouts, and I'm not sure where that has come from. So that's an update from the middle schoolers. And then, we've been engaged on the more of a professional hat in the vaccine front. So we'll be joining the city crew at the SoPrep and giving vaccines on Saturday. This morning there were appointments available. As of this moment, every appointment in the state is pretty much went away. So in the last 2 hours, but never fear, there is more vaccine on the way, and there are so many more options available to get signed up than there were just a month ago. So lots of people doing a lot of great work. Props to our public health folks, the City of Soldotna and Borough Emergency Management Team. They're doing a lot of work to help this roll out. So, and we're number 1 in the country. So, state of Alaska, we should be real proud of that. A lot of good things happening. So, that's
Thank you, Mr. Ruffridge. Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As one of the new and younger members of the council, the clerk is very good at keeping me in line, that I can't simply write to everyone on the council and ask them their idea on something. That's a violation of open meeting stuff. So I want to mention that the end of next month, March or early April, I'd like to do a resolution in support of the Soldotna Police Department. It's my hope, and the mayor said he definitely would like to co-sponsor and all that. But also he mentioned that I should speak with the clerk, that there have been individual members of the Soldotna Police Department that there have been resolutions or other things, so I want to coordinate there. I'm also hoping if the city manager doesn't mind, I'd like to speak to the police chief to get some ideas from him in terms of some of the outstanding things that are done by the Soldotna Police Department. I'd certainly mention the intergovernmental connections we have with others. I spent a lot of time today witnessing the bravery and the courage of the Metropolitan Police and the Congressional Police in terms of doing their jobs. And it made me think I really appreciate our police as well, and so that's the purpose. It's my hope, but again, I'll have to be straightened out for whatever I do wrong. I'm hoping every council member will sign the resolution, hoping the mayor would certainly sign it as well. And it's my little way of saying I appreciate law enforcement very much, and we need them. And so I just want to let people know I can't do it as a whole. I can't send out a copy. But what I would like to ask, if anyone is interested, particularly from the council, if you have any particular idea you'd like to see there, if you'd send it to me. You can't send it to everybody, that's a violation. But if you have an idea, and so Mrs. Parker, who's a wonderful source of ideas, she might have all kinds of things, she'd just send it to me, and so that you can't send it to all of us. But again, I want us to do this. I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney, and it is nice to see everybody in person and be able to actually have communication and not have to raise your hand and pause and all those things. So I want to thank the city manager and the departments for the reports, and this past year has been challenging for all of us, but in looking through and reading the reports from the departments, they not only confronted and addressed the challenges, but they took care of business, and they did it in an outstanding professional manner, and I just want to commend them and thank them for the work that they do on behalf of the city and the residents. So thank you for that. Those are wonderful reports to receive. And I want to thank the council members for sending me the evaluations. I will be pulling documents together, and I will be sending you individual emails so that before the council meeting on the 24th, or we have a special meeting at 4 o'clock, get your order into Breck for what you want to eat. You will have had the opportunity to read it. And as Councilmember Carey mentioned, when you get that, please don't reply to me. Just pick it and read it. And if you have questions, bring them to the meeting on the 24th at 4 o'clock. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Parker. Mr. Chilson,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No comments tonight.
Ms. Hutchings.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to the administration for providing additional funding for the food bank. I think that I'm so proud of Soldotna and of Kenai for stepping up, but Soldotna for so much more. I don't know if you're aware how much food was distributed so far, but the outgoing weight of food that the food bank did was 2,200,000 pounds of food that they have provided for people on the peninsula versus previous years of 1.2 million. So I think it's commendable that Soldotna as a whole has been so instrumental in making sure that food gets out to the hungry. So thanks to the administration, it's been wonderful.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchings. Again, it's great to see almost everyone's smiling faces, but it's good to see you all here together again. I hope we can continue doing this and don't have to go back to Zoom meetings. I get eye strains looking at that TV monitor. So, good to see you all. No need for an executive session tonight. Item 14 is meeting and announcements. We have a February 24th, 2021 City Council special meeting at 4 p.m. and also on February 24th, City Council meeting at 6 p.m. And seeing anything more before us, meeting's adjourned.